on using Westlaw to locate cases by their parties' names or their case citation. So the first thing that we're going to do is log into Westlaw. It's a subscription-based service, so you will need to be logged in to access it, and we go through the library homepage to find it. So this is the library homepage. We need to click on databases and then select W for Westlaw. And you can see here we've got two options, Westlaw or Westlaw UK. They obviously speak for themselves, but we need Westlaw. So once you've logged into the library and identified the Westlaw Australia database, you are then taken to the Westlaw Australia homepage, and you can see here that there's a large search bar in the middle of the screen. Now you can do a lot of searching here without having to go anywhere else in the database. So for example, if we're looking for the case of Cobalt, which is a 2019 High Court decision, let's say that we've only got the case citation details in this instance. We can type the case citation information into this search box, which is volume 267, Commonwealth Law Reports at page 1. So we'll type in 267, we don't need the year in this instance, and you can see that as soon as I start to type in the search bar, it's automatically looking for matches to what I'm typing. So I've typed in the volume number, then I will type in the abbreviation for the Commonwealth Law Report series, which is CLR, and you can see that this is now narrowing down the search. It already knows that it's only looking for a case. And then page 1 is where the judgment starts in volume 267 of the Commonwealth Law Reports. And you can see there that it has found the only match, which is Australian Securities and Investments Commission and Cobalt. So if we click on that, it will then take us through to that case. So you can see that we've located the High Court of Australia decision. It's important to check that you have the right court because, of course, cases may go through a series of appeals. So, for example, we could have seen a Queensland Supreme Court decision followed by an appeal to the Queensland Court of Appeal, followed by an appeal to the High Court of Australia. So it's important to check you have the decision from the right court. Now you can see here that this is referring to the medium neutral citation for this particular decision. So this is assigned by the court, and we want the gold star in law reporting. So we want the authorised law report series. Now for High Court decisions, that's the Commonwealth Law Reports. So if we click on View Reported Versions, you'll see that we can access the Commonwealth Law Report version here, which is the gold star in this instance. You can see that we can also access a different version here, but that is an unauthorised law report series. We want the authorised law report series wherever possible. So let's click on that. And as soon as we've clicked on that, we can then access the PDF version of that judgment in the Commonwealth Law Report series. But let's just take a moment to look at this head note. So you can see it tells us the hearing dates, which judges were involved in the hearing. You can see that the head note provides an overview of the case. So here, these are the catchwords that relate to the subject matter of the case. There's a brief summary of the facts, and then it provides a summary as to what the court held. Note that head notes are useful, but you shouldn't rely on them as such because sometimes they can be inaccurate. They're not approved by the court, so it could be that they don't focus on all of the legal issues that were the subject of the appeal. Now, once you have an overview of the case, you may then want to find out a bit more information about how that case has been received subsequently in other courts. So this decision was heard in 2019. How have the courts responded to this decision in the last 3 or so years? For that, we need to use a case citator. So if you go to the Citing References tab, you can see that you can click on cases. This then provides you with, in this case, a very long list of decisions that have subsequently referred to Cobalt in some way. So just returning to the top, just by way of example, you'll see that in 2022, the Federal Court of Appeal in Hudson and National Australia Bank referred to Cobalt. I just wanted to show you that when you see this term distinguished by, This relates to the doctrine of precedent. So in 2020, the Victorian Court of Appeal decided that the facts of Cobalt and the facts of this case, JAMS 2, were so materially different that the case was distinguishable. Now, we'll discuss in more detail what that means, but in essence it means that the Victorian Court of Appeal doesn't need to follow the full High Court decision of Cobalt, even though it is in fact a High Court decision. Now you can see, going back to our Citing References tab, that you could also select secondary sources. So if I click on that, you can see here that it provides you with a list of, in this case, 46 secondary sources. So that would be journal articles, legal encyclopedias that have mentioned the case of Cobalt. So just by way of example, number 3 here is a journal article written by an academic that talks about Cobalt. Now, these kinds of sources, so these secondary sources, might be important if you are preparing a response to a theoretical essay question in the future that requires you to critically analyse the law, because these journal articles and secondary sources might provide you with insight into the advantages and disadvantages of a particular court decision, how it's changed the law, its impact on society at a practical level, and how the law might develop in the future. So that can be a good resource, particularly where it's a controversial case or it's a high-profile case. Sometimes, though, there won't be any secondary sources that have referred to that particular case that you're looking at. Now, another source of information is the table of authorities. If you click on that, you can see that it then provides you with a list of the authorities that are referred to in the case of Cobalt. So you can see here there's a 1973 decision and a 2009 decision. So these are the cases that the court discussed in its judgment. If you wanted to know a bit more about the history of the case, you could also click on the History tab, and you can see it shows you the pathway to the appeal at the High Court level. So you can see here it also gives you access to the judgments in the lower courts before it got all the way to the full High Court on appeal. So we're now back to the Westlaw homepage. Now we could of course type the name of the case here into the search bar, but what that's going to do is search the entire of the Westlaw database. It will therefore come up with not just cases that have cited Cobalt, but also secondary sources, for example journal articles or sections of legal encyclopedias that mention the case. So we need to narrow the search down a little bit so that we can locate the case that we're looking for by its title. One of the ways that we can do that is to click on Cases, which is just below here. So these links here actually are a method of narrowing down the scope of the search. So if I click on Cases, so you can see here that we're now limited to the scope of the cases section of the database. So when we type Cobalt here, it will actually limit its search to the cases section of Westlaw. We could further narrow the search down by using these links here. So if we knew we were looking for a Queensland Court of Appeal case, we could just select Queensland. But in this instance, we're looking for Cobalt. I'm just going to click the search button here, and you can see that the top hit is actually the case we're looking for, which is the High Court decision from 2019. Now note that your supervisor may have said, please find me the decision of Cobalt, but didn't indicate which court's decision you needed to obtain. In this case, you can see that this has been on appeal from the Federal Court of Australia and eventually made its way up to the full High Court. So at that point you might want to go back to your supervisor and say, I found decisions in the following courts, which one do you want me to provide you with? Now once we know the case that we're looking for, if we click on this link, you'll see that it will take us right back to where we got to when we searched by citation.